In this first part, I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself. Let's talk about your home. Do you live in a house or an apartment?
I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and back there we seldom have houses. Very rich people have houses actually, like mansions they usually call them. So we lived in an apartment, and it was by a bustling road and main road as well. But also we had a lake near us, so we had a good view.
Nowadays, do you live in a house or an apartment?
So now we're also living in an apartment. Now I'm currently residing in Louisiana, and we are actually in a lease. So I have leased an apartment for us, for myself, and for my wife.
Which room in your apartment is your favorite room?
I would say my bedroom because I like to lie down when I read. I'm a student, so I have to spend a lot of time when reading. Sometimes I read while at my office. At my university, I have a dedicated room there, but when I'm in my house, I like to read in my bedroom.
Let's move on. Let's talk about writing. Did you write a lot?
So nowadays, I'm not writing a lot, but I used to. I actually worked professionally as a content writer and proofreader. And fun fact is, I actually wrote a novel and published it as well. It's in English. So yes, I like writing. You can even go far as to say I love it.
And what do you like to write most?
About analytical things, discussions, philosophical matters. So my novel that I was talking about, so it's basically primarily dealing with philosophical dilemmas of whether overthinking or critical thinking, they have a fine line or whether they intersect.
And do you prefer typing or writing by hand?
I'm a typist. So whenever I take notes for my school or nowadays for my university, I always type. I seldom write. And I believe that I'm actually in the minority here because most of the people I know, they prefer to write by hand.
Let's talk about technology. What technological products do you often use? For example, computers or mobile phones?
Yeah, all of those things that you mentioned and much more. My phone, for example, I do not know that if I can survive a day without my phone. And I also need my laptop PC as well. Back when I was in my home country, I used to have a computer. So I used to use that all day. Whenever I was at home, it was on. It was never off.
And have you bought any electronic devices recently?
So not very recently, but when we came to the US, I did purchase myself a laptop because I felt like the current one that I had, so I already had one, that wasn't up to the mark. And also it was a little bit old, not that old, but a little bit. So I thought that I would make myself a purchase of a new laptop.
Are there any technological devices that you would like to buy in the future?
A phone, I guess, that would be at the top of my list. For example, my phone, I bought it, I think. It has been almost 3 years. That's not a long time, but I think that it has some cracks and other stuff. It's not completely obsolete. I can still use my phone for a lot of things, for even my YouTube channel as well. Sometimes I film, so I still use my phone a lot, but I think I can do well with another one.
What benefits do technological products bring to us?
Many, many benefits. I would say that the benefits are, for example, convenience. Because we have a mobile phone now, 20 years ago, and even before that, of course, we didn't have, or they weren't very mainstream. So one would be convenience. Another would be, for example, if you want to go by plane, or if you want to learn about something, you can use Chat GPT, which is blowing up nowadays. You can Google. Even Google wasn't very common when I was growing up.
We're going to move to part 2, and in this part, I'm going to give you a topic, and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Can you start speaking now, please?
I would like to go on a memory ride back to when I was, let's say, 5 or 6 years old. So it's about 20 plus years ago. This long walk was with my father, actually. And since I was just 5 and 6 years old, I didn't have a lot of experience, and my father didn't really let me walk that much by myself. So that's why I particularly remember this long walk. As I said, this happened around 20 to 23 years ago, and it was near our house, and we had to go to another place. I do not recall exactly where we were going, but as far as I remember, I think it was supposed to be a little bit of grocery shopping with my father at night, at around 10 p.m. at night, and we were supposed to take a rickshaw. But for some reason, rickshaws were scarce on that night, and it's and if you don't know what a rickshaw is a manually driven vehicle. It's a three-wheeled vehicle that's very common in Bangladesh, in India. So that's why we were forced to walk. And as I mentioned, I was with my father, and we were walking for about 40 to 45 minutes. And since I was very young, I couldn't walk that much, as I've already said. But I also had this personality of never complaining. It's sometimes I did complain, but usually I would not. So what I did was that my father would sometimes ask me, at that time was asking me that, Baba, which is son, do you want to get on my arms? Do you want me to help you walk? And I remember telling him that no, Baba, which means no, father, it's okay. I can walk by myself. But I remember that it was so hard. It was such an ordeal for me to walk. For the first 10 or 15 minutes, I didn't feel a thing. I was enjoying the breezy night. But soon, maybe at the 15 to 20-minute mark, I started feeling sore, and maybe it developed into a prank.
Okay.
So into a cramp, I should say.
Thank you. Have you told many people about this long walk with your father when you were young?
I actually have not. I mentioned it in passing to my mother, but I didn't explain it.
So we've been talking about a long walk that you've had, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, leisure time. Now, in your home country, do men and women typically have the same leisure time activities?
I would say no, because still there is a gender barrier or a gender dimension between men and women of what men and women do. So typically males, like if we talk about children, they play with toys, and girls, they usually play role play or play with dolls and other stuff, whereas boys would not. And adult males, they hang out with their friends, whereas not everyone, but female adults or female teenagers, they are not allowed to go outside at night by themselves. Or it's not like they're not allowed, but it's frowned upon in our society. So they're like do not usually hang out with their friends, especially not at night.
And would that be for their safety, or would it be more in terms of a cultural idea of how women should spend their leisure?
That's a good question. I think it's both. It's both a safety issue and also a cultural barrier or a cultural stereotype. So, of course, Bangladesh is a Muslim majority country. So Muslims believe in making sure that the women, they don't go out without a guardian. Maybe it's their husband, maybe it's an elder brother or somebody like that. So that is one reason why they are not encouraged, but it's changing because of globalization and because of everything, because it's the 21st century. And another reason that you said is safety. Yes, unfortunately, Bangladesh and especially India, like in that part of the country, rapes and assaults happen. They are not very uncommon. So since they are actually religiously bound to not, or religiously at least restricted, if not bound, to not go out at night. So those who do, they find themselves as targets.
Right, okay. So what about as people get older in places like Bangladesh? Is it that there's more opportunities for how to spend leisure time, or is it more that preferences just change?
I would say the latter, because when people get older, especially they reach their retirement age, I know that in developed countries like in the US, like in the UK, people save up for their retirement. They go to places, they go for maybe vacations, even abroad, or maybe at least across the country. But here in Bangladesh, it's only really a privilege. So the upper class, they may think of these stuff. I myself have not put so much stock into that, but I think, as far as I know from my general knowledge, it's really a privilege. So basically their preferences change when they become grandparents. For example, their whole lives revolve around their grandchildren, or at least a massive portion of their lives.
Let's talk about large sporting events. Do you think it's a good idea for countries to host large sporting events such as the Olympics or the World Cup in their home country?
Definitely. If even if you think about it from a capitalist point of view, even if you criticize it as a money grabbing opportunity, still I would say that it's a way to bring people together. Yes, they will profit. Yes, people will come and then spend a lot, maybe more than they would have spent if it was not in a festival or not in a grand sporting event. But still, it brings people together, and I think the advantages are more. And yes, I think that they should actually do these things.
Do you think there are any negative or downsides to hosting large sporting events, say the Olympics?
Yes, as I mentioned, I was talking about capitalism and consumerism. So there are harsh critiques against these things. For example, people say that people are becoming more and more materialistic nowadays. And it's because of events like these which push them to be more materialistic. And it's like, however much you can spend, however much you own, it defines your identity, or it makes you a step up from the other person, the other people. And some other disadvantages would include pollution, because when a large number of people gather in one place, obviously the larger the gathering, the more the pollution will be. So that is also, of course, an issue.
How do you think that countries should compete with one another in order to provide incentives for organizations such as the Olympic Committee or Formula One to host in their country?
That's a very insightful question. I haven't ever thought of that, but I would say that I guess they do. And I guess it's a good thing to think about, or to plan things out. Which country will get to host this event in this year, and maybe 4 years later, another country will get to host this event, because it's a big deal. Yeah. I think auctions happen, or at least internally, they plan a lot of stuff. And I think that it's a logical move on their part.
Okay, thank you very much. That is the end of the speaking test.
Thank you.
Very impressive speaking test. Wow. So I'd be giving you 8.5, and I think that some examiners would be giving you band 9, and I'm on the cusp between 8.5 and 9. With getting a band 9, I think if you were just to do the test a couple of times, one of them would be band 9, because you've got that level. And it's just about, in this case, having the right exam with the right examiner where you feel at your total best.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question regarding part 2.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult topic, actually. I thought in the beginning that I would talk about a walk with my wife, but I was thinking that it's not exactly long, because we usually do not walk more than an hour.
Sure.
Seldom walk more than an hour. And then I thought that, okay, I can talk about my childhood walk that I had, that I distinctly remember even now. Then I thought that it would be a better way to, or maybe a better idea to talk about this. So the question I have is that I sometimes, when I was thinking of what to say next, I went back to the questions and then I talked about it. So speaking of this, or as I mentioned, so because of this, is there any sort of repetition going on? Would the examiner think that I already talked about this? Why am I going back and mentioning it again?
Yeah, so it's funny. It's interesting that you should say that, because I did note that there was a bit of repetition in part 2, and it was the kind of thing that, because part 1 and part 3 were so impressive in terms of fluency and coherence, I just thought, this is a topic that's maybe slightly more difficult for him, but he's not showing his full set of skills here. So I was able.
And even if it was 8, still it would be 8.5, because it would be 9988, right?
Exactly. So you'd still have your 8.5, but I would still be confident to give you band 9 based on your part 1 and part 3 fluency and coherence. Yeah, there was a little bit of repetition, and a good way to avoid that is to really just put emphasis on creating a storyline. And you actually did that very well. There were great phrases like just interjecting what Baba means in your language, the way that you can talk to a father but also a son using the same phrase, how that you weren't a child that complained much. This is also what really boosted your score. You were able to really think about what the examiner needs to know in order to follow along with your story.
Like 3, 4 seconds, 5 seconds after talking about rickshaws, I began to realize that maybe probably but many examiners might not know what rickshaws are. So then I went back to explain what rickshaws are.
And that's great. That's a really good idea. For example, if you were doing the IELTS test potentially in Bangladesh, where there's a lot of rickshaws, maybe you wouldn't explain that. But certainly if you're in the US doing your IELTS test, you'll want to maybe say what a rickshaw is just in case they don't know. But just in terms of part two, telling a story, if you're running out of things to say, referring to the future, unfortunately my father's not alive, so we can't go walking anymore, or next time I'm in Bangladesh, I'd love to see him and we're going to go walking again. It's one of the ways that we connect most. That's always an idea of something just to have in your back pocket in case you run out of things to say.
Yeah, like the PPF model.
Exactly, yes, past, present, future.
Right, so I have actually compiled a list of my IELTS listening tips, reading tips, speaking and writing tips as well, and I have separate documents for these. I will not go over them one by one, but I'm just gonna skim over them. So we have 17 separate strategies. Some of them overlap, but mostly I think that they are 17 separate strategies. And some of them also have some processes. For example, when you go to the map questions, some of my students, actually most of my students, IELTS students, they struggle with map questions. They struggle to keep up. So I have some strategies, or basically some guidance, some guidelines for them. Like they can highlight their entrances, the roads, the noticeable buildings and other stuff. If it's a paper-based test, then they can just circle or underline. And if it's a computer-based test, still you can highlight it. You can highlight with your mouse. It's very easy. If you don't know, you can just Google how to highlight with your mouse on a computer-based test. You'll find it. So that is one strategy. Let's go to the first top of the document. Do you know that you have over 5.5 minutes of pause time during the IELTS listening test? It's quite a lot if you think about it. We know that the test is more or less 30 minutes. So over 5 minutes. So this is an estimate. It's not like every IELTS listening test will have 90 seconds of preparation time at the beginning. Some will have 95, some will have 93. It's more or less 90. Then after after the half mark or the half point mark of part one, for example, after question number 4, 5, or 6, you get another 30 seconds. Then after part one ends, you get another 30 seconds. So in total, you have over 5 minutes of pause time. So it's very significant. I feel like this is the single greatest strategy for IELTS listening, is that to make sure that you don't get lost when the audio clips play. So make sure that you go to the questions. If you don't highlight, at least read the questions. And it's better to highlight or to underline keywords, for example, the verbs, the adjectives. If there is any negation like not or only, like do highlight them, and also highlight the number of words. Usually nowadays, you are asked to write in only one word. But if no more than two words or no more than 3 words come, then make sure to highlight them. So these are the two strategies that I'm going to talk about right now. And also capital letters. I think this is a very good strategy. I got 9 in listening and I used all capital letters. Why is that a strategy? Because sometimes you might think that it's not a capital letter word, but it is actually a capital letter word. So don't take the risk of not writing in capital letters. If you write everything in block letters, like hospital, like this, it's fine. Sometimes a matter of confusion may come as to whether you should capitalize words if it's a bullet point starting. So at the start of a bullet point sentence, do you start with a capital letter word or a small letter word? So it's actually flexible, but if the other bullet points start with capital letters, you should also start with a capital letter if the fill in the blanks is in the start of the bullet point. So you don't need to think about all of these. It's completely safe to write everything in block letters. So let me go to IELTS reading now. So I'm opening up the document. So here also I have a lot of strategies, 14 to be exact. So let's talk about the first one. My suggestion is to skim the whole reading test at the beginning, maybe take 1 minute. So why do that? It's a psychological trick, I think. It's a psychological solace. You will find some, you will not be in the dark as to what type of question comes, because some people, I would say most people, struggle with information match questions, matching headings questions. So if you find those questions, you know that, okay, it's in passage 1 or passage 2, reading passage 2 or passage 3. So what I suggest is that most of the questions, except for matching headings, information match questions, and let's say yes, no, not given questions, apart from these, pretty much the other types of questions occur in sequence. So the answer to question number, let's say 2, will come after question number 1, and then the answer to question number 3 will come after that. So you can use a particular strategy of whether to skim the whole test, skim the whole passage, or just go line by line, because sometimes you will need to go line by line to understand some of the answers, especially in information match questions. So what I suggest my students to do is that if there are any heading match or information match questions, and also sometimes yes, no, not given questions, you need to read line by line. Skimming will not help you. It might help you a little bit, but it will not be enough for most of my students. So what I suggest is that read the first paragraph line by line and highlight if they want. It's always a good idea to highlight, but do not highlight a lot. Highlight minimally, because the whole purpose of highlighting or underlining words is that your eyes go to the important words, important pieces of information. So if you highlight everything, what's the purpose, right? So read the first paragraph, and instead of going to the second paragraph, go to the questions. Again, I'm emphasizing this. After reading the first paragraph, go to the heading match or the information match questions. Maybe there are 5 questions or 6 questions or 7 questions. So read the questions and try to match whether any of the questions match the first paragraph. Maybe one of the questions will match. Let's say option number 3 matches. So the answer to question number 3 will be A, paragraph A or section A. Then go to the second paragraph, read line by line, and then go to the questions and try to match if the second paragraph matches with any of the pieces of information or heading. So like this, do the heading match questions. But if there are no heading match or information match questions in the passage, let's say you have 3 passages. In maybe 1 or 2 passages, you will have information match questions or heading match questions. In the other 1 or the other 2 passages, you will not have them. So for those passages which do not contain information or heading match questions, I suggest you to skim the whole passage within 1 to 2 minutes for time management, because most of my students struggle with time management. And then use the scanning technique, like try to look for the keyword from the question and try to find the location of the answer. If you find one location, the other locations are quite easy because they come in sequence. Usually 90% of the time or 95% of the time, they come in sequence, in order. So I think that if there are no heading match or information match questions, it's usually, not always, but usually easier to find the answers. So skimming would be fine rather than reading everything line by line. So that was the strategy I wanted to talk about in reading. Let's go to writing. So writing, I have 2 documents. And Mr. Eli has talked about the types of essays, and I have also categorized them into 5 parts. So for example, if you have an agree or disagree essay, then I would always suggest to stick to 1 to 2 main ideas per paragraph, per body paragraph. All right. So in the introduction, obviously, we should give a background, and this can be easily done by paraphrasing the question. If this is the question, then you can paraphrase it like this or this. It's better not to paraphrase word by word, but to change the structure of the sentence. If it's an active sentence, maybe you can make it passive, but don't worry too much about the paraphrasing. And also there is a thing which is paraphrasing too much. For example, if the question says teenagers, you cannot say children, right? Because teenagers and children are not the same. Maybe you can say adolescents, but not children. So if you're not sure how to paraphrase, leave that word in. It's okay. It's better than mistaking the word. Then you should give a thesis statement, which is basically an outline sentence you say fully or agrees or disagrees, and you also say why. I think this is also important. You should also mention why you agree. So I wrote, because of online education's availability, that is one reason, and affordability of international courses. So I have a sample here that can be a thesis statement. And the first body paragraph can have this structure: the topic sentence, explanation of the topic sentence, example, and then like a supporting sentence, or you can also call it a linking sentence, which is basically a mini summary of the whole paragraph. It doesn't have to be a summary, but it's like a callback or something like a reference back to the topic sentence. So this can be one topic sentence, which is basically stating the reason why you agree. So I agreed that online education is superior. Why? Because they are readily and conveniently available in the former. Former means online education, and latter means offline education. So just state whatever your argument is, state that in the first sentence, then explain it. What do you mean? You say in other words, or this is because, or you give any other sentence which serves as an explanation. Then you give an example. So the thing is that if you write in this structure, topic, sentence, explanation, example, and link, we can call it a TEAL method, TEEL, right? So if you write in the TEAL method, you might fall into one challenge, which is that sometimes you need to write about two main ideas in one paragraph. For example, if the question says, what are the causes and solutions? Then you need to write about two causes at least and two solutions at least. In that case, my suggestion is to skip maybe one example. If you write two main ideas in one paragraph, then maybe skip the example of one main idea, but keep the example of another idea. And sometimes if you're good at writing complex sentences, you can incorporate the example in the topic sentence. So I have other templates for the other types of essays as well. One other thing I will mention is that a counter argument and refutation paragraph, or as Mr. Eli says, it's a 70% agree plus 30% plus rebuttal, right? Is that the term?
Yeah.
So that would be my suggestion to highly ambitious students. So I think it's a little bit complicated. If you want to make it simple, I think you can get 6.5 to 7, even without that strategy, without that structure. But if your goal is to get 7.5 or even more than that, because writing is very hard to score high in. So if you are very ambitious, then you can also think about a counter argument and refutation paragraph, or the rebuttal and the disagreement paragraph. So these would be my strategies that I would like to talk about here. Finally, to speaking, this is actually made by my wife originally. I made a little bit of polishing. Yes. So she has strategies for all three parts: part 1, part 2, and part 3. So when you're asked a question in part 1, a very simple question would be, where do you live? Instead of saying I live in blank, you can say I reside in, or I'm from, or currently I'm living in. So do not exactly repeat the words used in the question if it's not very complicated. But if you feel like it's very difficult, then you don't need to think about it. You will not get penalized for it, as far as I know. But it's always a good opportunity to show off your vocabulary. For example, if somebody says, do you prefer swimming to, let's say, climbing, let's say, or hiking, let's say, swimming to hiking. So instead of saying I prefer swimming to hiking, or saying I prefer hiking to swimming, you can say, in my opinion, or I'm more of a swimmer, or I actually prefer swimming. Or you can say the former rather, or you can say the latter. Something like that. Change the structure, change the words. I think this is a very easy strategy to adopt in your preparation, I think, especially in part 1. Part 3 may be a little difficult because the questions are abstract. So at least try to do that in part 1. So let's see. So these are some strategies to think about. Like My wife also wrote about the PPF model. I heard about it from, I think, two channels, from Mr. Eli's channel, YouTube channel, and also E2IELTS, as far as I remember. So this is a very good strategy. You can think about talking about the past. Let's say the question is what I got about a long walk to remember. So I could talk about the past, and I could also mention something, even though I didn't. I could have said that nowadays I go on a weekly walk with my wife, or sometimes, if I can, I go on regular walks with my wife. I could have mentioned that, or in the future I could say something like, I'm pretty busy right now, so maybe in the future I'd like to revisit this, or I would like to continue this aspect, or I would like to do more walking with my wife in the future. So something like that.
Mm.
In part three, some common themes are here. I think you can find other sources as well that have common themes. Some phrases are here. For example, if you want to talk about your opinion, you can say, in my opinion, I think that, when it comes to me. So there are a lot of sources that you can find, things, vocabulary, transitional words and phrases. If you just search on Google or maybe on some reputed websites, then I think that should be in your preparation.
Mm.
I think Mr. Eli also talks about a similar one, which is the REE method. So yeah, so that's it. Thank you for the opportunity to show some of my materials.
Absolutely amazing materials. So unbelievably comprehensive.
Thank you. I do have my IELTS batch of students, so I try to make organized materials and give to them and teach from them. I try to make sure that, okay, you don't just read the strategies, try to incorporate them on your next listening practice test, on your next reading practice test, writing test.
Mm.
So I
Your
do that.
students are so
Try to do
lucky
that.
because you've taken so much information and you've put it in such a clear and concise way.
Thank you. Thank you for the. So
Yes. Great. And so, for example, some people watching this might say, well, actually, I want to study with Neon. So, what would be a good way for them to get in contact with you?
sure, you can leave my email in the comments, and also you can also give my YouTube channel link. It's Impromptu English with Neon.
Okay.
Impromptu English with Neon. So I will send you the link. You can put it in the comments. If anybody wants to be my student, I also offer personalized line by line writing feedback. So even if they don't have the time to have lessons with me, one-on-one lessons, or maybe in a batch with me, still they can get their writing checked line by line. Actually, one other thing I should mention is that now I'm a PhD student in English linguistics. So my master's dissertation was actually on IELTS writing test too.
Amazing. Wow. So,
Yeah.
you're becoming such a kind of master of the IELTS writing. So, what a great opportunity for students to be learning from someone that's, taken this to such a high degree of study, to
Thank
be
you. That's why I'm
master.
thinking of sitting for the IELTS maybe next year or something, and maybe hope for a 9 overall.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Keep me posted on how that goes.
Sure, sure.
Yes.
Thank
And,
you.
there's one other student that I know, a guy called Roy, who's managed to get
Yes,
9 in all parts of the exam.
I
You know,
have watched his video. Yes.
it might be worth contacting him because I think you're both very enthusiastic about the IELTS test, and I think you could both collaborate and do a lot of interesting things together because you're at such high levels.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will think about that. Yes, definitely.
Great. Okay, big thank you to you and big thank you to your wife as well. Wonderful for coming on and doing this test with me. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I loved it.